Tonight, the mother of one of Elon Musk's children is speaking out.
Saint Clair announced in February 2025 that she had given birth to her and Musk's son the previous September. The SpaceX founder has fathered 14 known children with 4 women, including Saint Clair.
For years, the internet buzzed with whispers about Elon Musk and the growing circle of women connected to him through children, money, and silence agreements. Most people suspected there was more happening behind closed doors than what the public ever got to see. Then came Valentine's Day 2025, and conservative influencer Ashley Saint Clair shattered that silence herself. In a single post on X, she confirmed what many had already started to suspect, that Elon Musk was the father of her 5-month-old son. What followed was not just a confession. It became a window into a world that very few outsiders had ever been allowed to see. Who is Ashley Saint Clair, and how did she get here? Before the name Ashley Saint Clair became linked to one of the most talked-about paternity revelations in recent memory, she had already built a real career inside the conservative media world. Born on July 31, 1998, in Florida and raised in Colorado, Saint Clair studied philosophy and political science at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. From the time she was in college, she was already stepping into political arenas, representing the Turning Point USA chapter at her school in public debates. That organization would go on to play a large role in her early rise. Turning Point USA, a youth-focused conservative organization, brought her on as a brand ambassador, giving her a platform and a national audience at a young age. That chapter of her career ended in 2019 when photos surfaced showing her beside white nationalist figures Nicholas Fuentes and Tim Gionnet. She stepped down from the ambassador role and stated publicly that she had not known their views at the time. The controversy followed her, but it did not end her career. She went on to work with the Babylon Bee, the right-wing satirical news site that had grown into one of the most read conservative humor platforms online. Her role there as a writer and, later, operations manager helped sharpen her voice and expand her reach. She also became a sought-after speaker on college campuses, reportedly commanding between $5,000 and $15,000 per event. In 2021, Saint Clair published a children's book called Elephants Are Not Birds, released by Brave Books, a Christian conservative publishing house. The book centered on an elephant named Kevin, who is persuaded by a vulture character named Culture to believe he is a bird. The story was widely read as a critique of transgender acceptance and gender ideology. The book reached #1 on Amazon's children's satire chart and cemented her position as a recognizable name within conservative circles. By 2023, she had crossed 1 million followers on X, where she regularly posted political memes, cultural commentary, and anti-woke content that resonated with a large audience. She had made multiple appearances on Fox News and endorsed Donald Trump publicly. From the outside, everything about her life looked like a carefully constructed brand built on conservative values and a sharp online presence. Then, in the spring of 2023, Elon Musk began interacting with her posts on X. According to what Saint Clair later told the New York Post, Musk began messaging her directly after engaging with her content. He then invited her to the X headquarters in San Francisco, following a work assignment she had in the city. Their relationship developed quickly after that, with travel involved, including trips on his private jet. The custody petition she later filed in New York court stated that their romantic relationship began around May 2023, and that their son was conceived in January 2024. But the real details of what happened behind the scenes and what she was asked to do to stay silent forever only came out after she chose to speak. Keep watching, because what she revealed about Musk's private arrangements is something most people never expected to hear from someone on the inside. The Valentine's Day announcement and the secret she had been sitting on. On February 14, 2025, Ashley Saint Clair posted a statement on X that stopped a large portion of the internet in its tracks. The message was direct and carefully worded. She wrote that 5 months earlier, she had welcomed a new baby into the world and that Elon Musk was the father. She explained that she had not disclosed the information previously in order to protect the child's privacy and safety, but that tabloid media had made it clear it intended to report the story regardless. She asked the press to respect her son's privacy and to refrain from invasive coverage. The timing of the announcement, Valentine's Day, was not accidental. It came days before the story was going to be published by tabloid outlets that had already been asking questions. Saint Clair made the decision to get ahead of it herself, on her own terms, in her own words. Musk's initial public reaction on X was a single word: "Whoa!" That response came alongside an account sharing a screenshot of an old 2020 X post, where Saint Clair had jokingly written about wanting to get Musk's attention for a marriage proposal. The billionaire engaging with that post on the same day she announced the birth of their child struck many observers as a strange and cold response to a significant announcement. Saint Clair replied directly, writing that she and her team had been trying to communicate with him for several days and that he had not responded. She also noted in that same reply that the account Musk engaged with had posted images of her in underwear taken when she was 15 years old. At the time of the announcement, Musk had not been legally established as the father of the child. Saint Clair filed 2 petitions in New York County Supreme Court on February 21, 2025. One petition sought sole custody of the child. The other was a paternity petition designed to legally establish Musk as the father. Musk's own response to the paternity question was reported as him saying he was not against finding out. That non-committal position, from a man whose name had appeared on the birth certificates of multiple other children, was notable. The Wall Street Journal later reported in April 2025 that LabCorp test results showed a 99.9999% probability of paternity, confirming beyond any reasonable doubt that Musk was the father. The result was confirmed publicly by a spokesperson for Saint Clair. Also in April 2025, Saint Clair spoke to the Wall Street Journal in depth, and what she described painted a picture of how Musk's world actually operates. She said that after their son was born, Musk's wealth manager, Jared Birchall, contacted her and asked that Musk's name be kept off the birth certificate for security reasons. She agreed to that request. What she did not agree to was staying permanently silent about her son's existence. According to Saint Clair, Birchall reached out to her again and described a formal arrangement that other mothers of Musk's children had agreed to. That arrangement came with a financial offer, $15 million up front and $100,000 per month, in exchange for signing a secrecy agreement. Birchall reportedly cautioned her that taking the legal route would not work out well and that the others had signed similar agreements. Saint Clair turned down the offer. She later said she did not want her son to grow up feeling like a secret. One detail she shared that landed with particular weight was what Musk had told her about his intentions. She claimed that Musk had pressed her to have more children with him, telling her that to reach what he called Legion level before the apocalypse, they would need to use surrogates. He reportedly told her he wanted at least 10 children with her specifically. That was the version of Elon Musk that most people watching from the outside had never seen, described directly by someone involved. The meetings Musk had with their son were limited in number and brief in duration. According to Saint Clair's custody petition, Musk met the child for the first time on September 21, 2024, in New York City, spending 2 hours with him. He returned the following day for 1 more hour. On November 30, 2024, he visited again in Austin, Texas, for 30 minutes. Those 3 visits, totaling less than 4 hours, were the full extent of Musk's contact with the child before the legal battle began. What happens to a woman who says no to a $15 million offer from the world's wealthiest man? And what comes next when she decides to fight for her child in court instead? The answer to that is something that would reshape her entire life in ways she never saw coming. The legal battle, the child support cut, and the the Grok nightmare. Choosing to take the legal route against Elon Musk came with costs that Ashley Saint Clair had not fully calculated going in. She described her own decisions in 2025 as unplanned professional setback and said the experience left a gap in her professional history that could not be legally explained. Those were not the words of someone who felt protected by the courts. They were the words of someone who had learned the hard way what it means to go up against a person with virtually unlimited financial resources. One of the more startling developments came on March 31st, 2025, when Saint Clair was photographed outside her Manhattan apartment selling her Tesla. She stated publicly that the reason she was selling the car was because Musk had cut her child support payments by 60%, which she characterized as punishment for her disobedience. Musk, through his side, countered that he had paid $2.5 million along with $500,000 annually while the paternity question was still being resolved. The dispute over money became one of the more publicly visible pieces of a legal fight that was otherwise largely sealed by the courts. Saint Clair later started a podcast she called Bad Advice, which she credited with helping her avoid an imminent eviction. The fact that a woman who had built a media career with over 1 million followers found herself in that financial position after the legal dispute with Musk was something her audience noticed and discussed widely. The trouble did not stop at finances. Saint Clair also found herself at the center of a disturbing set of incidents involving Grok, the artificial intelligence image editing tool built into X and owned by Musk's company XI. She reported being targeted with AI-generated explicit images created using Grok, some of which were based on photographs taken of her when she was a minor. She described discovering a prompt asking Grok to place her in a bikini. When she raised the issue, the tool's response reportedly dismissed her concern as humorous. From there, the images escalated into explicit deepfakes and videos. She stated publicly that photos of her at 14 years old had been manipulated and used in these images. She reported that both Musk and X did nothing meaningful to stop the images from circulating. Saint Clair subsequently filed a lawsuit against XAI in New York State, seeking punitive and compensatory damages. Musk eventually posted that anyone using Grok to generate illegal content would face consequences, and X's safety team said it would remove posts and suspend accounts. No comment from XAI about Saint Clair's specific claims was made publicly. Then came the moment that changed everything in the custody dispute. In January 2026, Saint Clair responded to a user on X who had criticized her past anti-transgender commentary. She expressed immense guilt for the role she had played and said she had been working privately to learn and advocate for members of the transgender community she had hurt. She specifically mentioned Vivian Wilson, Musk's transgender daughter, and acknowledged the negative impact her work had caused. Musk responded on January 12, 2026, by posting on X that he would be filing for full custody of their son that day. His stated reason was that her statements implied she might try to transition a 1-year-old boy. Saint Clair's supporters and critics disagreed sharply on whether that characterization was fair. She insisted that nothing in her apology had suggested any such thing. Musk's post was also notable as the first time he had directly and publicly acknowledged Romulus as his son. What her story actually reveals about Elon Musk. Ashley Saint Clair did not set out to become someone who exposed the inner workings of Elon Musk's personal life. By her own account, she was trying to navigate an unexpected situation in a way that protected her child and preserved whatever was left of a relationship with the father. But the further she went into that fight, the more she ended up revealing, piece by piece, about how things worked. The picture she described through court filings, interviews, and public posts was one of a highly organized system for managing the mothers of Musk's children. Jared Birchall, described as Musk's wealth manager, served as the point of contact for Saint Clair. The offer she received, $15 million and $100,000 per month, was not presented as something unusual or exceptional. According to Birchall, the others had signed similar agreements. That description pointed toward a standardized process rather than an isolated personal arrangement. Musk, by the time Romulus was born in September 2024, had already become a father to a large number of children with multiple women. His children, with his first wife, Justine Wilson Musk, included twins Griffin and Vivian, and triplets Kai, Saxon, and Damien, along with their son Nevada, who passed away at 10 weeks from sudden infant death syndrome in 2002. With the musician Grimes, he had 3 children, Ash, a 12, Exa Dark Sidereal, and Techno Mechanicus. With Siobhan Zilis, an executive at Neuralink, he had twins born in November 2021 and a third child born on February 28, 2024. Romulus was then the latest addition to that list. Grimes, for her part, had spoken publicly about her own experience in late 2024. She described spending a year fighting a legal battle in a state with what she called terrible mother's rights, having her social media posts and modeling work used as reasons she should not have her children. She said she was kept from one of her kids for 5 months and described the experience of fighting with only a fraction of Musk's resources. The parallels with what Saint Clair later described were hard to miss. Musk had also spoken publicly in July 2024 about his transgender daughter Vivian, referring to her by her birth name and saying he had lost his son to the woke mind virus. He claimed he was tricked into signing documents related to her gender-affirming care. Vivian disputed that account directly and told NBC News he was not tricked in any way. In a 2025 interview with Teen Vogue, Vivian said she had not spoken to her father since 2020 and had relocated to Japan. The moment Saint Clair issued her apology, expressing guilt over her previous anti-trans commentary and specifically mentioning Vivian Wilson, it landed in the middle of that already volatile history. Musk's response, filing for full custody within hours of her post, was seen by many as a disproportionate reaction. Others pointed out that it also represented his first direct and public acknowledgement that Romulus was his son, which came only after she had shifted her political position in a direction that contradicted the ideology he had been associated with. Saint Clair described her relationship with Musk on her podcast Bad Advice, saying that things started going south at a recognizable point during their interactions. The details she shared over time added up to a portrait of a relationship built on proximity, ideology, and the world Musk occupied, but one that quickly ran into the realities of what he expected from the women in his life. The expectation of secrecy, the offer of payment for silence, the management of the relationship through a third-party wealth manager, and the limited in-person contact with the child all pointed to patterns that were not unique to her situation. What Saint Clair ultimately admitted publicly went beyond just confirming a pregnancy. She admitted that she had turned down a deal that most people in her financial position would have found difficult to refuse. She admitted that fighting a legal battle against someone with nearly unlimited resources had cost her professionally and financially in ways she had not anticipated. She admitted that the person she had been publicly, the author of Elephants Are Not Birds, the brand ambassador, the conservative commentator with strong opinions about gender and identity, was no longer the person she wanted to be. And she admitted all of that while still in the middle of a custody dispute with the most powerful man she had ever dealt with. The irony that a woman who had built her public identity partly on anti-transgender content ended up in a personal and legal conflict that forced her to re-examine those positions was not lost on anyone following the story. Whether that shift was genuine or strategic was something that observers debated, but the shift itself was real and documented. The story of Ashley Saint Clair and Elon Musk became something larger than either of them individually. It became a case study in power, silence, ideology, and what happens when someone decides not to accept a carefully constructed arrangement designed to keep things quiet. And the fact that it all came to light the way it did, through a Valentine's Day post on a social media platform owned by the man she was accusing, made it one of the stranger and more revealing stories to come out of that entire world. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.